right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been creating a series of video presentations that are based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. We're talking forms and form validation. We're up to the validating forms using JavaScript. As the author mentions here, you must use JavaScript if you want basically total control over the look and feel of native error messages. So if you want to make it do what it's not meant to do naturally, we'll say. In this section, we'll look at different ways to do this. Most browsers support the Constraint Validation Api, which consists of the methods and properties that are shown here. As mentioned here, this Constraint Validation API makes the following properties available on the above elements. Validation message, which returns a localized message describing the constraints that don't. In other words, if something doesn't satisfy, you can put your own message in there. Validity, which returns a validity state object that contains several properties describing the validity state of the element, and some of them are shown here. These are the most common ones. Will validate, which returns true if the element will be validated when the form is submitted and false if it will not. The Constraint Validation API also makes the following methods available for those elements. Check validity, which returns true if the element's value has no validity problems and false if it does. Set custom validity, which adds a custom error message to the element. If you set a custom error message, the element is considered to be invalid and the message will be displayed. All right. Implementing a customized error message. As they mentioned there, as you saw in the examples earlier, each time the user tries to submit something invalid, you get the default browser error message. So it may differ depending on what browser you're using. So in other words, if I go back to this one right here and I click, notice I get please select one of these options. And let's grab this. And let's bring it up in Firefox. And we will go to the same part right there. And you'll notice if I click, I get please enter. Oh, that looks the same. How about this? So if I enter this and then hit, I get please fill out this field. And here I'll probably get about the same thing. So please fill out this field. Notice I get no icon or anything, just the words please fill out this field. Here I get the little information icon. All right, a little bit of a difference between the two of them. Says these automated type of messages have two drawbacks. Number one, there's no standard way to change their look and feel with CSS. And number two, they depend on the browser locale, as it says, which means you can have a page in one language, but an error displayed in another language. It's possible. Customizing these error messages is one of the most common cases of using this Constraint Validation API. It says, let's work through an example of how to do this. We'll start with some simple HTML. All right, and so we'll put this in there for our new form. In other words, we'll get rid of all the stuff that we had in there previously. In fact, I'm going to even remove this. Even maybe I shouldn't, but I am anyway. All right, let's get rid of this entire big form that we had in here and replace it with this smaller version. All right, so that has changed. So now it looks just like this. Okay, all right. Add the following JavaScript to the page. Now, to add the following JavaScript to the page, there better be a script element or else we'll have to put it in. All right, or let's do this. So let's copy this. And rather than adding that to the page, let's add a new file here. And we'll call this validate.js. And as I like to do, I put it in double quotes to make sure it's saved exactly like that. And then let's come in here And we will put in our head section here, we will put in script source equal whatever we just called it. I think it was validate.js. We'll put in the defer and our ending script tag. Hopefully that'll work okay. All right. Let's see what they tell us to do next. Here we store a reference to the email input. All right. Now let's see if we put that in there, if we leave out an email address, that if it says I am expecting an email address, let's see if that works. It didn't appear to find it at all, which is not a good thing. Script source equal validate. Validate. Mail. That is actually correct. I don't see why we couldn't have put that in as an external file. I can try putting it in internally, but that really and truly should not matter. I can even put it up above here. Move these over. Paste that in. But that should have done nothing to make this work. That said, we'll see. Now, it's not submitting it, but it's also not giving me an error message. How about if I just put in hello? Now I'm getting the standard error message. I'm not getting my own here. Well, let's look and see what they say. So if I do come in here and put in nothing, I get nothing. If I put in hello, I'm expecting it. Well, that's what I'd expect. So let's try that one again. But let's try that one in Firefox. So you can see the one here. All right. And I'll put in hello again. And you'll see again when I submit, I get that message. And in Firefox, it goes away. So let me try to do them both. That message, just a regular one. And here we get the icon. All right. So evidently I put in something incorrect. I'm not going to go back and change it though. All right. And they say, now that we've seen a simple example, let's use this API to come up with something slightly more complex. All right. Well, here the email has got to be at least 8 characters. All right. So that's the HTML. Okay. This one uses the noValidate attribute to turn off the browser's automatic validation. This lets our script take control over the validation. However, this doesn't disable support for the Constraint Validation Api. This means that even though the browser doesn't automatically check it, you can still check it yourself. So it's a good way of verifying that it works. Our input to validate is the email, which is required and has a minimum length of 8 characters. All right, it says let's check this on our own and use a custom error message. We are aiming to show the error messages inside of a span element. The area live attribute is set on that span to make sure the custom errors will be presented to everyone, including to screen readers. A key point here is that setting the noValidate is what stops the form from showing its own error message bubbles. All right. So now on to some of the CSS rather. Again, I'm not worrying about formatting right now. Finally, it says, let's bring the JavaScript in. Again, I won't worry about formatting. First, let's just run it before we try theirs and see if it works. All right, please enter an email address. I'm going to leave it blank. Nothing happens. Doggone it. Type in something invalid, and it is still submitting. So I'm screwing something up, but I'd rather use theirs and go on here. Notice it's, again, a lot of comments. There are many ways to pick a DOM node. Here we get the form itself, all right, and we're using by tag name, so we're grabbing the form and we're grabbing the first form that we have in there, all right? Then we are grabbing and setting email equal to the email that's in there, and email error, all right, the query selector, we are using an ID of mail, all right, and span error. Then we are setting an event listener up in our input element. Each time the user types something, we're going to check and see if it's valid. If it's valid, we're basically going to remove the error message. Otherwise, we're going to show the error message. And when we attempt to submit, if the email field is valid, you let it submit. If it's not, we show the error. And we perform the form from actually being sent because there's nowhere to send it. All right. So if the validity is missing, if it's empty, we should get that error message. If it doesn't contain an email address, we should get that message. If it's too short, meaning it's less than 8 characters, we should get that message. All right. And that's what they're explaining in here. So again, look, if I put in nothing, you need to enter an email address. If I put in, all right, needs to be an email address. How about if I just put in A at, needs to be an email address. B needs to be at least 8 characters. You entered 3.com. Notice it still isn't long enough. Now it is. All right. So as mentioned here, the Constraint Validation API is a powerful tool to handle form validation, let you have enormous control. Now, it may seem like I'm sprinting through this, and I'm not going to lie to you, in a way I am. But I do want to mention to you that we are going to be going over this stuff and doing an example of this in class. All right? Validating forms without a built-in API. In some cases, such as legacy browser support or custom controls, you won't be able to or won't want to use the Constraint Validation API. So you'll have to write your own. And it says to validate a form in this way, ask yourself a few questions. What kind of validation should I perform? What should I do if the form doesn't validate? How can I help the user correct a bad example? And there are some things right here, some resources that you can take a look at. And here's the form. Now it says we've removed the HTML validation features. So what did they do on here? All right. They removed the requirement that it be 8 characters. They removed the requirement that it was required. But what they've done is they've turned the invalid pseudo class in here to change the border color and the background color. All right. And then as it says, there are big changes here in the JavaScript code, which needs to do, because since we took the onus away, so to speak, from the HTML and a little bit from the CSS, we're putting it onto the JavaScript. All right. You can see this is the regular expression pattern for an email. We can try it, but we should get the same kind of a result. In other words, there, well, nothing happened. So how about, okay, expected an email. Oh, that's a little weird, but took that. Okay. All right. I think that's enough for this particular chapter. So, client-side form validation is a big topic. It is an important topic, and we will spend quite a bit of time in class on this. So we've now done the intro, your first form, how to structure a web form, basic native form controls, the HTML5 input types, other form controls, styling web forms, advanced form styling, US pseudo classes, and client-side form validation. So the only thing left in this section here, in this module or whatever, is the sending form data. And then we've got these three in the advanced topics. So I'll be back with the sending form data in just a couple moments.